Kentucky's already played a lot of really, really tough teams this season, but this matchup against Alabama may be the most difficult challenge Mark Pope has faced yet.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Alabama Crimson Tide, one of the best teams in the entire country. The analytics love this team, and if you go and watch them, you will understand why. One of the toughest games Kentucky has played so far this season, easily one of the most difficult matchups for Mark Pope and co. Going to break this one down today. How does Kentucky slow down the Tide? Will this be a shootout, or maybe, just maybe, will we see a little defense played here from both sides? Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show, and if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting, and right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky versus Alabama. The Crimson Tide, 14-3, 3-1 in the SEC, coming off of their first conference loss at home to the Ole Miss Rebels. We'll talk at length about that game, but first, as we like to normally do, let's talk a little bit about our opponent. What do we know about them, and what do they do well? Well, like I mentioned, Bama 14-3 with losses this season to Ole Miss, Oregon, and Purdue, a bunch of really tough games. Number one strength of schedule in the entire country. They're number 9 on KenPom, number 8 in the net, 4-3 in quad one opportunities so far. Their head coach, a very, very good one that Kentucky went after in the offseason when Coach Cal left for Arkansas. Nate Oats, 131-57 during his time with the Crimson Tide. The Tide have a lot of really big-time wins already. Wins over Illinois, Houston, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. That's not counting teams like Creighton, really talented teams like Rutgers, who are just simply underperforming right now. This is a very, very, very good Alabama team, despite maybe the analytics saying they've taken a little bit of a step back offensively, at least compared to last season. What do they do well? Well, this is probably the lengthiest list I have had so far whenever preparing my notes for an opponent. Here we go. Alabama has several players that can finish through contact, and I italicized contact here because if you go and watch, the Crimson Tide have several players that can drive and just finish through multiple people. It's incredibly impressive to watch guys like Mark Sears or Jaron Stevenson or even Aiden Holloway get to the rim and finish with such efficiency. Every single player in this rotation outside of Mark Sears is shooting at least 56.4% from 2. Everybody is getting to the rim, and they're having a lot of fun with it. Obviously, this is one of the fastest offenses in the entire country. They're number 1 in adjusted tempo. They're number 1 in the nation's strength of schedule. So they've seen the best, and they've gotten out, and they've run against the best. 61.3% is what Bama is shooting from 2. That is just an incredibly high mark. Speaking of mark, lead guard Mark Sears has taken a pretty sizable dip from a season ago in terms of efficiency, in terms of analytics, but he is still an elite player. He can catch and shoot from 3. He can play off the dribble and shoot from outside the arc. Again, like I mentioned, he can finish through contact. He's a really good distributor. His assist rate has gone up a little bit this season. This is a team that knows how to run offense, and it is incredibly hard to stop because of the fact that they really love to shoot 3s, but they're so efficient from 2. They will hound you inside and out. This is a virtually impossible offense to stop with the right personnel. They've kind of struggled a little bit from three-point territory this season, which has kind of forced them in ways to rely a little bit more on their defense. And speaking of the defense, it's much improved compared to a season ago. This team was in the, I believe, 110th nationally in adjusted defensive efficiency last year. They're number 33 this year. And the big thing that's improved for me, at least watching them, is their ability to protect the rim. And it starts with the Rutgers transfer, Cliff Amari. He actually was somebody that Kentucky went after this offseason as well. Somebody like Jonas Adu, where they're a big physical rim protector, pretty efficient at the rim. He's actually, I think, shooting like 74% this season, which is just incredible. Again, Oats, Sears, Amari. You've got like guys like Stevenson, Holloway. This is a team full of scores. This team also, by the way, is tied for number 1 in points per game in the country with Iowa, which I did not realize Iowa had that in them. Kentucky, by the way, 3rd in the country in points per game. But they can score. They play really good defense, especially compared to last year. They're also, on top of all of this, they're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the nation. According to Mark Pope in his press conference, Alabama's actually the number 1 team in the nation over the last 5 games. So what an awesome stretch for Kentucky to go from Florida to Georgia to Mississippi State to Texas A&M and now to Alabama, where we are 5 games in and we've faced some of the best teams in the nation when it comes to collecting second chance opportunities. Just the SEC is an absolute gauntlet. No surprise there. The other thing about Alabama defensively is they have a tendency to run teams off of the three-point line, which could prove to be very important here. They prefer you to go and try and attack the rim and play against guys like Amari or Grant Nelson, who can protect the rim very, very well. So this is an Alabama team that doesn't really have a ton of flaws. If you look at their 3 different losses, there's not like a major sticking point as to like how they've lost. Yes, they've not shot like very well from 3 in all 3 of those games, but they're not really known as an efficient 3-point shooting team. They're only 32% this season, which is in the bottom 3rd nationally. So it's kind of been just happenstance. Teams have gone on runs. Teams have been able to see guys like Malik Dia and Ole Miss. They've been able to pop off. I want to dive into, obviously, how Ole Miss played them and how Texas A&M played them the game before, because I think that will start to poke some holes maybe in what feels like an invincible Alabama team, and then you can start to apply that to maybe how Kentucky wants to attack, because personnel-wise, I think Kentucky's got some answers for what Alabama may want to try and do. Before we dive into all of that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million users and billions in winnings, PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all of the football action. Now, it's playoff time, obviously, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, and here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 different players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes this season, and this week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to have to go out there and throw the ball quite a bit against Buffalo this weekend, 250-plus passing yards, and then Travis Kelce. I think he's going to show up in the playoffs. It does not shock me that the Chiefs have been rolling, and I think they're going to roll against the Texans, which means I think Travis Kelce will play a big part in that, 70-plus receiving yards for him. It's super fun and easy to predict and play. Plus, with PrizePicks' Flex Play, you can double your money even if one of your picks don't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings super fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. If you're ready to run your game this football season, you can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 for just playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. That is PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, continuing along here on the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky, Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would love for you to do so. If you have any questions, if you have any comments about today's episode, about the Bama game, about Kentucky basketball, about anything going on with the Cats, you can leave that in the YouTube comments below. At Locked On UK is where you can find me on Twitter if you want to ask a question there. Hit me in a tweet. Message me. I'll try and get to you, and we'll try and answer it on the show if we can. Okay, continuing along with our Kentucky versus Alabama preview. We've talked about just how good the Tide are at, well, kind of everything. They don't really have a major sticking point here when it comes to maybe what they could possibly be vulnerable at. But you saw in that Ole Miss game, they were human. they were human for a variety of reasons, and a lot of it had to do with stuff that Texas A&M just simply couldn't do the game before. So the first thing I want to take a look at is how Ole Miss shut Alabama down. In case you didn't see, Bama lost that game at home 74-64. Just 64 points for the Crimson Tide. If I'm not mistaken, that is a season low for them. Chris Beard, obviously known for a very, very solid no-middle defense, but Ole Miss was able to do a lot more than just kind of hold them down defensively. First and foremost, Ole Miss prevented Alabama from grabbing second-chance opportunities. Like I mentioned earlier, this is one of the best teams in the nation in offensive rebound percentage. Just 4 offensive rebounds, if I'm not mistaken, for the Crimson Tide in this game. They were forcing Alabama to try and hit with their first opportunity. Yeah, just 4 offensive rebounds. Nobody on the team had more than 1. Nelson, Stevenson, Amari, and Chris Youngblood, the South Florida transfer, all grabbed a board apiece on the offensive end of the floor, but they were not able to get those extra points whenever the outside shots were falling. Texas A&M, on the other hand, could not stop Alabama from grabbing boards, just period. If you want to go look at the box score from that game, 24 offensive rebounds for the Alabama Crimson Tide. That was the big difference between those two games. If A&M, who is a really good rebounding team, had been able to prevent those opportunities, I think A&M would have won that game, even without Wade Taylor, who is still out, by the way. Ole Miss was also able to, at least relative to the A&M game, they were able to keep Alabama off of the free throw line. 26 free throws for the Crimson Tide. I believe they made 17 of them, as opposed to, and I want to just pull this back up just to make sure I'm not insane. Yeah, 40 free throws for Alabama on the road against Texas A&M. They made 27 of them. If they had made more, who knows, maybe they could have won that game more comfortably. Of course, also Texas A&M, 28 of 48 from the charity stripe. If they had made more, could have won that game. Man, just make your free throws, guys. It's big. But also, holding Alabama off the free throw line and not giving them second opportunities is important. You're starting to see a theme, and we're going to build to one major point whenever we do keys to the game here at the end of the show. They also, Ole Miss did, slowed the pace down a little bit. It wasn't big, at least according to Ken Pom, in terms of adjusted tempo, but relative to Texas A&M, it was pretty slow. If you want to go look, the pace of play, I believe, was like 79, which is really, really fast. The Ole Miss game was 76, which, again, not a major mark, but you go watch the two games, and you'll notice that the A&M game was very much so more up and down. I think that's part of what Texas A&M wanted to do early in the shot clock. Zurich Phelps was just incredible at getting to the rim in early offense, and Alabama really couldn't stop it. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's tied for the fourth fastest or third fastest or third quickest game Alabama's played this season against A&M. It's definitely the fastest conference game they've played so far this year. So slowing the pace down, keeping them off the free throw line relative to whatever the heck happened against A&M, preventing second chance opportunities. Make sure you do not let them grab offensive rebounds. And then the final thing here is you got to be able to hold one of the nation's best scorers in Mark Sears. Sears right now is averaging 18.6 points per game for this team that's averaging almost 90 a game, by the way. He had 27 against Texas A&M, and he only had 11 against Ole Miss. Massive note there is that Ole Miss was able to hold Mark Sears, and Texas A&M just simply was not. It was a variety of ways that Mark Sears was able to score against A&M. He hit 4 threes. He was able to get to the rim, finish through contact. He was able to get to the free throw line. Obviously, he's a really good distributor as well. So he is just like, if he was on another team, he would be a one-man offense. But this Bama team, again, like I mentioned, personnel-wise, they've got several guys that they can go to. Nelson, who's averaging 12. It's a shame that Wrightsell is out for the year. He was averaging 11.5 and was a great three-point shooter for them. LeBaron Philon, who is a great player coming out of high school, he's averaging 11. Holloway, transfer from Auburn, he's averaging 11 as well. Reed, who has been solid for them down low. Moriai, who's only averaging 7 and 6 a game, but he, because of his efficiency, I think could be a major problem in this one. So yeah, there's ways to shut this Alabama team down, And a lot of it for me has to do with what Kentucky does in their front court. Okay, Amari Williams, can you go out there and play physical against guys like Amari and whenever Alabama wants to drive to the lane because there's going to be a lot of driving to the basket in this contest by Alabama. Can you get up there, put a hand up, and freaking defend the rim? And if you do that, can there be somebody there to grab the rebound, or can Amari Williams do it himself? That is going to be the big thing for me. Personnel-wise with Kentucky, you got a 6'11", 260-pound center. Can he go out there and inflict some muscle and play physically like he did against A&M? We've not seen it all year. We've not seen Kentucky do it consistently all year. They're starting to have a little bit more of an edge to them. I want to see them play strong. Don't be soft. Play strong at the rim. Obviously, we're going to get into some more keys to the game. I've got 9 here. This is a big-time matchup against a really, really, really tough opponent. So we're going to get to keys to the game. I'm going to give you my final score prediction here in just a moment. Of course, before we do that, I will tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel, because from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if they win their first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is super easy to navigate. The variety of bets keep every single game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has absolutely got you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. You can make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, wrapping up the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky, previewing Kentucky basketball's matchup with the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we've talked about what they do well, how they struggled against Ole Miss. We've talked about Amari a little bit. Let's get to keys to the game. Here we go. Getting back in transition is going to be the first thing for me here. I think Kentucky's going to have to try and find a way to not necessarily slow the pace of this game down, but simply slow Alabama down. If you don't want this to be a shootout and you want to be able to have a little bit more of a controlled game in an environment where, frankly, you should be able to control it at Rupp Arena, you're going to have to be able to get back. Mark Pope said it in his press conference about how just Alabama, if you score and you are celebrating, you will look on the TV and you will see your team's already bringing the ball back up the floor because Alabama has already gone and scored by the time the camera has hit the celebrating players and the crowd, and then all of a sudden Alabama's already got 2 more on the board because they drive and get to the rim so well. So getting back in transition is going to be crucial in this game. Grabbing defensive rebounds, this is the only key to the game that I have in bold because it's the second most important thing here and really may be the defining thing that happens. If you can't get back in transition, at least grab defensive rebounds whenever Alabama misses. If you can do that and you can keep them off the offensive glass, it will be massive for you. Running Alabama off the three-point line is also going to be big. Bama was only able to take 23s against Ole Miss, so slow them down, grab second chance opportunities away from them, and take them off the three-point line. Fourth thing here, defense without fouling. You have to be able to win the free throw battle in this contest. Speaking of winning contest, don't turn the ball over into fast break opportunities. You also have to be able to try and win turnovers in this game. Amari Williams and Andrew Carr are going to be massive on both ends. I think that Amari and Carr, if they can play physical, which Carr with his back injury, I'm so impressed with the way that he's been able to stick it out. It's going to be tough for him. But if they can, on the offensive end of the floor, show some muscle, I think they can get some buckets. And I'm not saying easy buckets. I'm just saying I think they can get buckets here, which could open up things for Kentucky's offense. Defensively, you're going to have to be strong. You're going to have to stand up tall in this one. Massive opportunity to show what you're capable of against ball screens and against players driving to the rim. Carr, Amari, Garrison, huge on both ends of the floor. You have to take Sears out of the game one way or another, whether it's foul trouble or whether it's just making sure that he's not able to get shots off. You have to shut him down. Lamont Butler drawing the assignment. We'll see what he can do. This is one of the toughest guards that he's going to have to get in his entire career. We know that he was able to play well against Sears, if I'm not mistaken, against San Diego State in the NCAA tournament. We'll see what happens here. You have to play fast and you have to prevent Alabama from playing faster. You yourself need to be able to get out in transition and play with early offense and play efficiently through that. On the other hand, you have to be able to get back and slow Alabama down for the reasons that we mentioned earlier. And then the final key to the game. Can Jaxson Robinson keep it going? Can Jax, who has shot the ball very well over the last 2 games, can he keep the offense rolling? He's going to be big. Kentucky's going to look to him. They're going to look for him to shoot. Can he get it done? All of these things that I'm discussing, getting back in transition, defensive rebounds, playing fast and prevent Alabama from playing faster, defense without fouling, running Alabama off the 3-point line, don't turn the ball over into fast break opportunities. It all comes down to limiting the amount of possessions that Alabama has. If you take away possessions from the opposition and you are able to give yourself more, it's about volume. It's about volume for both of these teams. Give yourself more, going to have more opportunities to score. Even if you're not insanely efficient, it's going to provide some problems for your opponent. Find ways to give yourself more possessions and take them away from Alabama. That's the big thing here. I think Alabama, as good as they are, as talented, as they can be, as fast as they play, I think Kentucky is going to give them some problems that Texas A&M could not in terms of outside shooting. I think that Kentucky will be able to grab more rebounds than somebody maybe like Oklahoma or Texas A&M. I think that while not elite at the rim, Kentucky has an opportunity to continue to play positively in that direction as far as 2-point defense, especially with the way that they played against A&M. Momentum, confidence, personnel, numbers. I think Kentucky wins the game. It is as difficult, if not more difficult, than the Florida game. 1,000%. As difficult, if not more. And Kentucky was barely able to eke that one out. Florida's only lost, by the way. I think Kentucky wins. I think there's more defense in this game than we expect. I don't think either of these teams gets over 85. I think Kentucky finds a way to win the game. I'll say 83-79. I think that pace in this one will be weird. I think it'll be weird for sure. Jax, Amari, Carr, Butler holding it down. Does Dawe provide his consistency as usual? We're going to have to see. Dawe staying in front of guards is going to be huge too. That's going to be massive. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at Lance_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below. You can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.